All right, man. And we are rolling. What's up, dude?
Not much. How are you?
Doing well, man. So, Brandon, do us a favor. Go ahead and introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
All right. My name's Brandon Quesada. I am the admissions director here at Penfield Addiction Ministries, and I've been on staff here almost 6 years.
Okay. Have you been in admissions the whole time?
I have. I started out as just like an intern, and then I just moved my way up to now working head over admissions.
Okay. What's a little bit about your entire sobriety journey, I guess? What got you here? What are some things that have helped you in recovery?
Okay. I personally came through the program here at Penfield in 2013, and it was a situation where I wasn't happy to be here. Wasn't really happy about it being faith-based, and I don't know whether I found God or whether God found me, but I just celebrated 7 years last month.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah, I didn't want to be here either. It was either go to Penfield or go back to Atlanta and don't speak to us anymore. And I was about ready to say, okay, that's perfectly fine. But I guess after a lot of talking, I decided, all right, I'll go. But I was going to do my 6 weeks and then leave. Mm-hmm. I was back to Atlanta. And here I am 3 years later. So this place definitely has something about it that really keeps us around.
Isn't it funny how that works?
Yeah. I was not going to stay here whatsoever. Because I'm from here. So I was like, one, I didn't believe Penfield existed. And from being around here, this place is kind of out in the middle of nowhere. Mm-hmm. And I was like, that can't be right. The only time people come to Penfield is if they live here. There's nothing else here, except for what used to be Mercer University. I didn't realize this place was on Mercer. And sure enough, here it is. And here I am.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about admissions. For anybody that might be peeking around, kind of wondering how the whole process works or what this all looks like. What is it like working in the admissions office day to day? Okay,
well, typically, I would say 90% of the time, the very first contact is the family. Mm-hmm. And a lot of times it's people just inquiring, trying to find out a little bit of information on what we do, who we are. And one thing that I have noticed is that a lot of people are like, wow, someone actually answered the phone.
Really?
Because you get a lot of places where it is it's like a recording or leave a message. And, here we call, we answer. I think it's important that if an individual is seeking help or a family is seeking help, that they need to speak with a live person to help them with what they've got going on. Now, typically, we will kind of give them just a rundown on what we do, who we are, and we do it in a way that it's easy for it to be comprehended. The last thing that we want to do here is give them a whole laundry list of things that they have to do and make it seem like we are building boundaries, preventing them from getting into treatment when we are trying to, we're trying to make it the smoothest transition possible from wherever the client is to arriving here at Penfield's doorstep.
Okay. And you mentioned that like a real person answers. We don't have a recording. It's either you or one of the other admissions counselors. Mm-hmm. What about if somebody were to call in late in the afternoon or in the middle of the night or very early in the morning? How does that look?
Well, we have on-call staff. Either myself or the other admission staff will be on call. So any time of the day or not, if you call me at 3 a.m., there's a chance that I might answer. If I don't, I'll call you back at 7. Mm-hmm. We want to be very responsive because what I feel is that individuals can find us online in the middle of the night and say, well, I'm just going to give them a call because my family wants me to call them. Mm-hmm. And then they don't expect us to give a call back.
Yeah. Have you found that with actually being able to speak to people and kind of walking them through the process, Do you find that there's ever any resistance in the beginning, or do things ease up after you speak to people for a little while? I guess after that initial call, because like you mentioned, a lot of people call because a family member or maybe an employer wants them to call. Me as an example, I didn't want to call, but I kind of got told to call. Do you find that after that first call, when you can tell, or somebody even says that they were asked to call, do things get easier with time after working with a person and getting them in here?
Yes, they do. One thing that I've noticed is throughout the process, I only have about a minute, 2 minutes to be able to establish some sort of rapport with the client who's calling. I mean, I try to look at it from their point of view. Hey, man, I don't know you, and I'm not going to tell you anything. So I have a very small window to be able to try to gain whatever trust I can get from them, and it's eventually it gets easier.
Okay.
I've talked to people for months before they come in. There's families and clients that when they get here, I feel like I know them already because I've been talking to them for sometimes 6-8 months.
Yeah.
And it's really rewarding to be able to play that part. A lot of times people call 15 treatment programs before they call Penfield, and then they probably call 10 or 12 programs after they call Penfield. So I have to be the difference. I have to make an impression on the very first caller, whether it be family, whether it be employer, whether it actually is the client. I have to make that first impression to say, you know what, I talked to that guy and he cared.
Yeah. So what's the process look like, right? From I call you, I say, hey, I'm looking at treatment. I have this problem. What can you do? Walk me through the process of first call to me walking through the doors of Penfield as a patient.
Well, first, I want to ask the individual, you tell me in your own words what's going on. What got you to this point? What's the reason for your call today? And I listen to every circumstance is different. But I want to get to know a little bit about them. Then once they have established, yes, I'm looking to get into treatment, then we do what we call a pre-admission screening. And that's something where we just kind of gather some information, kind of figure out what's been going on with them, their history, their family history. We do our best to cover everything from A to Z. And the reason that we do that is every client that calls us is a good fit for Penfield. We just need to make sure that what we offer is what the client needs. And that's what we're doing for the admissions process. Now, after the admissions process is complete, we basically break it down into 2 other steps. We need to speak about the financial arrangements for the cost of the program. Now, with us being a nonprofit, we do our due diligence to work with just about everyone. Regardless of what they can bring in, we try to do our best. I feel that it's a situation that God has kind of provided for this ministry, and we do our best not to take advantage of it.
Yeah.
Now, after the financial arrangements have been made, we are licensed through the Department of Community Health, and their requirements for admission is some medical documents done. It's a TB test, a syphilis test, and a nursing assessment. Now we do that. We have an urgent care that we work very closely with. They're very understanding of what we do, understand what the protocols are, and we just send them over there to get all their medical stuff done.
Okay.
Now, one other thing that's it's really not something that the state is requiring at this time, but we also are making sure that everybody gets a rapid result COVID test.
Yeah.
Just to make sure that our campus, stays secure. And I think that we do that so that the family can, have an opportunity to feel safe about where their loved one's coming.
Yeah. This whole process from screening, talking about the financial arrangements, to getting the medical stuff done, how long does that typically take?
Well, I like to get them in the very next day. And in some cases, we can get them in the same day. I like to see it happen within the first 72 hours, because typically if someone doesn't come in within the first 72 hours, a lot of times they don't come in at all. So I'll always suggest that this is what the plan is, this is how we make this happen, and this is when it needs to happen. Because a lot of people that when they call us, they're in crisis, and we want to make sure that our staff does everything in our ability to get them here as soon as possible.
Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So let me ask you this. So you are a certified substance abuse counselor, right?
Yes, I am.
Why are you still in admissions? Why do you continue to stay in this side of the substance abuse spectrum?
Well, my original plan was admissions was a way for me to get my foot in the door. And from then, when I seen the first opportunity to work directly with the guys, I was going to take it. Now, I'm not sure what happened in the process, but I feel that I have found my niche. I originally wanted to work with the guys, but now I feel that Penfield is going to get the best version of Brandon in the admissions department. I've got it in my heart I like to deal with the addict, with the client right from the very beginning. It helps me to help people in crisis. I'm not opposed to working directly with the clients, but I feel that this is where God wants me to be.
Yeah, that sounds great. I was just talking with Gary earlier today. For those of you listening or watching, Gary's another one of our admissions counselors, and he was the client community was just talking and laughing, and the staff was around, and we were having a discussion with him, and a lot of smiles, a lot of laughter, a lot of good conversation. And Gary came up to me when we were walking back to our offices, and Gary said, one thing I love about my job is so often when I speak to these guys for the very first time, they are in crisis mode, like you mentioned, and they're just distraught and they're upset. And then to see them just a few weeks later with smiles on their faces and laughing, and just to hear where they were and then to see what they've become is just something that's truly rewarding.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I think that when people have this vision of what rehab, if you want to call it, treatment for drugs and alcohol, they have this idea of how it's going to be, that there's going to be hospital beds and gowns and IVs and bright fluorescent lights. And that's not what we do here at Penfield at all. I try to tell people on the phone, I'll say, Hollywood has kind of put a dampering on the way that substance abuse treatment is. But, what Penfield is it's kind of like summer camp, but summer camp where you learn how to get clean from drugs and alcohol. You learn how to know who God is. You learn who God is. And it's a situation where you're not always going to have to look over your shoulder when you're here. A lot of times people look at treatment as, that there's a very close conjunction with treatment and incarceration. And for us here, that's just not the case.
Not at all.
Yeah.
That's a good way to describe it. Summer camp, some of my fondest memories have come from when I was a client here. Still a number of guys I keep up with to this day that I was a client with. And you're right, Hollywood has kind of put a weird spin on what treatment and rehab looks like. Kind of on both ends of the spectrum too. it isn't some institution with gray floors and gray walls and bars on the windows. And at the same time, you're not going to walk out of your jacuzzi suite and take a look at the beach in Malibu either. It really is kind of right there in the middle. It's absolutely not jail. It's a place for guys to get together. So one cool thing about addiction, and I say this over and over again, but the cool thing about all of this, if you could pick out a cool thing, addiction doesn't care who you are. And at the same time, in recovery, it doesn't matter who you are, where you came from, what you did for a living, how much money you made, what color you are. None of that stuff matters. Everybody's got the same problem and everybody's got the same goal. And through that, and especially here at Penfield, through that and through everybody seeking God and building and fostering their relationship with God, amazing things happen every single day.
Yeah, and you know, one thing that I noticed that was different about Penfield is that the way that my journey kind of happened is I had a previous client who had suggested that I come to Penfield, and I said, well, I guess I'll give it a shot. I knew that I needed it. I just didn't really want it, you know, and when I got here, I was like, at first I was excited to the fact that there wasn't like barbed wire fences, you know, because I had no idea. Yeah. I didn't know really what I was coming into. And when I arrived here, I was like, man, these people are all right.
Yeah.
I felt right from the beginning that they truly wanted to help me. And that was good because up until that point, people only wanted something from me. Mm-hmm. They didn't want to help me. They wanted me to help them, you know, just in a different facet. But yeah, and to this day, it's still that way. You know, at times the staff can change here, but the primary purpose of everyone who works here is to help the client be better for himself.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I didn't know what to think when I got here either. And I just thought, everybody's so happy. What is going on? Why are people so happy? This is rehab. This isn't not supposed to be like this. Little did I know, right? And that's the important thing to remember too here is we all have a mission here. I mean, it's to help people and to get people closer to God at the same time. And to me, those two things are two in one. You know, when I think about recovery and when I think about spirituality, I really don't actually separate them. They both exist together within my mind and within my life. And through that is one of the ways I've been able to find success and sustained recovery. You know, you mentioned that after coming here as a client and also through working here in your journey as, you know, an admissions counselor, now admissions director, your spiritual relationship with God has gotten even stronger and better as time has gone on. What are some things that you've done that have allowed your relationship with God to get even stronger?
Well, when I first got to Penfield as a client, I didn't believe in God. Mm-hmm. I had no spiritual relationship. It wasn't something that I came here for, but it was something that kind of it happened. Mm-hmm. You know, it happened while I was here, and you know, there was a lot of trauma and a lot of things that I blamed on God, and that was the reason that they were happening. Mm-hmm. That God was picking on me, that it wasn't my thing, you know. But through my relationship with Christ, I've been able to restore all of my family relationships. I've been able to be a productive member of society, and I think the best thing about it is that I'm happy.
Yeah.
You know, like I'm happy with who I am instead of being happy with what I put in. You know what I mean? I'm just, it's helped me have some self-acceptance. Mm-hmm. It's helped me learn how to hold myself accountable, and it's helped me allow other people to hold me accountable as well. You know, for a long time, I always thought, I don't need help. I don't need, you know, the biggest thing for me was that I finally learned that it's okay to ask for help, you know, and that was never anything that I was used to prior to my recovery, prior to my relationship with God. It's really a cool thing to see, you know?
Yeah. And especially because so often we're kind of raised and brought up to not ask for help. We're taught to not show emotion, to just be strong, to carry on, to keep trudging forward, and to just do whatever it is we have to do. And so many of us didn't talk and communicate. And I think for me, one of the things that helped my spiritual relationship was just learning how to talk. Because I didn't do it. I never did it. I didn't talk to you. I didn't talk to anybody. I didn't even really talk to myself for that matter. And once I learned how to talk, and more importantly, listen to people who know more than I know and kind of follow their lead, not only did my spirituality grow, my humility grew. And you made a good point too, that happiness, because it's a different kind of happiness. It's happiness mixed with peace and joy, and it just makes me able to relax and just kind of take a deep breath and just be okay, and then just not be worried about the 10,000 things that I have to do later on today, or all the other problems that came with everything that I was going through. And when I was in my alcoholism, like I have peace. And that's very different from just being a little bit happy. That's a deeper and more inner sense of just being okay.
Mm-hmm. It was like, for me, sure, there was external happiness, but this was something new. This was internal happiness.
Yeah.
It was something that I truly felt. It's something that I felt rather than an emotion based towards something that happened on the outside. I can be happy that I have a lot of money, but that's something that's external. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? I can be happy on a holiday or anything, but none of those are indicators of anything that's going on inside of Brandon.
Yeah.
And I think that's one thing that we don't really advertise. People send their loved ones here to get better, and not only do they get clean and sober, not only do they have that relationship with God, but they find that inner happiness, that inner peace that they sometimes didn't even know existed.
Yeah. And that's a very good point. I think when you look at addiction in general, that lack of happiness is something that so many people are trying to fill. And they turn to drugs and alcohol to try to produce that feeling of happiness. But it doesn't work. Or maybe it does for a minute, but it keeps working right up until it doesn't anymore. And then we don't have the luxury of choosing to try to create that happiness. It becomes a compulsion. Mm-hmm. But then when we come here and we start to have that happiness, it's freeing is what it is.
If the day that I arrived at Penfield, if my only motivation was to stop using, stop drinking, that was what I came here to change, and that was what I was looking to change. Little did I know that was just a very minute thing that changed in my life. It was one of those things that everything had to change. Everything did change. It wasn't just the drugs and alcohol that I had to change. It was my behavior. Mm-hmm. I had to alter my behavior. But if you asked me on day 0, I would have told you that I'm just going to not put in and keep living. And fortunately for me and everyone around me, it wasn't just that changed. It was everything. It was that inner peace is probably what activated those changes. Mm-hmm. Because you get here and it's like you said, these people are happy. You know, these people seem like they want to be here. And I wasn't really sure if I wanted to be here.
Yeah.
But then whenever I started to be open-minded, to have an open heart, like I always say, man, I don't know whether I found God or whether God found me. But however it played out.
Yeah. Well, what's it matter?
Yeah. It doesn't matter.
You got together anyway. That's such a good point. Talking about whether or not it really would have stuck without that inner happiness and that inner peace. Mm-hmm. Because, we can take away those things. We can take away drugs and alcohol, but there is still a void there. And if we don't fill it, if we don't find something, then the drugs and alcohol are going to find their way back in. Mm-hmm. I couldn't agree with you more. I don't know if I would still be sober today if I hadn't become whole, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Man, and you know, we do have that void. And if we don't fill that void with something positive, then it'll be filled with something negative. Whether it be drugs and alcohol, whether it be women, whether it be food, whether it be gambling. I can become addicted to anything and everything that's on the outside that makes Brandon feel better on the inside. Mm-hmm. You know, but if I can make Brandon feel better on the inside initially, then I don't have to rely on using, whether that's using drugs, whether that's using people, regardless what it is that I'm using. If I'm happy on the inside, then the motivation's different.
Yeah.
You know?
That's a good point. Well, all right, man. But let me ask you this before we get out of here. If somebody were to come to you right now that was either looking to get sober or was in early recovery, what's the best piece of advice that you could give them?
Well, if someone was newly in recovery, the first thing that I would tell them is stay connected. You know, for me personally, I have, I'm an active member of a Narcotics Anonymous group, and you know, I have a sponsor and I have a network, and regardless of what's going on with me, I always stay connected. Mm-hmm. Anytime that I see somebody at a meeting that's new, never been there before, I'll greet them and I'll say, hey, man, you know, what's going on? Give me a call. Just because that way they have the opportunity to reach out. Mm-hmm. You know, rather than have them sit at home and not feel that they have anybody to reach out to, if they're hurting bad enough, they'll say, hey, that man at the meeting, maybe I'll give him a call. Yeah. Maybe he'll listen. You know, and that would be my biggest piece of advice for someone early in recovery. And my biggest piece of advice for someone who is seeking help, who is in an active addiction, my piece of advice would be don't give up. You know, there's always hope. Yeah. There is always hope, regardless of how hopeless that someone feels. There's always hope. If you would have asked me, 7 years ago, I was that hopeless guy. Mm-hmm. You know, there was absolutely no hope. I had come to the realization that I was a drug addict and I was going to be a drug addict, and if I could live till I was 40, I was doing pretty good. And that was all the hope that I had. But, I was exposed to the fact that there is hope. And that's the advice I would give to someone in active addiction.
All right, man. That sounds like pretty good advice to me. All right, brother. Well, I sure appreciate it, man.
Hey, man, thank you.
Thank you.